Welcome, everybody, to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, to another installment of our Before the Snap series here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the most inspiring place on earth. If you've tuned in before for this program, thank you so much. You guys are in for another exciting program. But if this is your first program you've tuned into, here's what you're going to learn. You're going to learn a little bit about all the different types of careers in and around the NFL. And this program is geared for, students in high school, college, young professionals, and even seasoned vets alike. And the goal of this is just to teach everybody all about the cool and unique careers in and around the NFL. My name is Jake Gray. I'm the Youth and Education Manager here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I'm going to be moderating today's session featuring our special guest, Alyssa Henke. And we'll get to her in one quick second, but a little bit about us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Our mission is to honor the heroes of the game and to preserve its history, promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. And those values we promote are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence, all of which play a huge role in the game on the field and make you that Hall of Fame athlete. But they also play a huge role, and maybe even more important role, in your life off the field with your family, and in this case, in your career. So before we get started, I do have some thank yous I'd like to pass out. First of all, to Alyssa, thank you so much for being a part of this program, and thank you so much for the things that you do for the game of football. We have a saying here at the Hall of Fame is the game wouldn't be like it is today without our Hall of Famers' influence. And that goes the same to you. Without your impact on the game, especially at the youth level, from on a day-to-day basis, the game would not look like it does today. Secondly, I'd like to thank our teachers and administrators in the classroom who allowed us to come into your classroom for this 45-minute to an hour program and teach your students a little bit about all the different career opportunities there are in and around the NFL and truly all of sports. And lastly, I'd like to thank our students for tuning in. Without you guys tuning in today, this program couldn't take place. So we're very excited that you guys are willing to learn about all these different types of careers. And we're excited to see all the questions that you guys have. Now, if you do have a question, we're live on Facebook right now. Submit that question in our comment section. Say what your name is, what school you come from, and what your question is. And we'll do our best to make it part of the program. So like I said, today we're lucky to be joined by Alyssa Henke. Alyssa is in her third season with the Minnesota Vikings, where she currently holds the title of Youth Marketing Coordinator. She manages databases and communications for all youth programs, aids in the creation of Vikings Huddle, which we'll talk about today, a digital youth show, oversees game day activation in Commons Park, and directs interns during Vikings training camp. She started out with the Vikings as a youth marketing intern before transitioning to her current role in the spring of 2019. She earned her bachelor's degree in sport management from the University of Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, in the spring of 2018 with minors in both business and sociology. So without further ado, I am honored to welcome Alyssa Henke for our next program here for Before Snap. So Alyssa, welcome.
Hi, y'all. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here today and just talk to you a little more about my career path.
So we talk about your career path and your current position, Youth Marketing Coordinator. So can we give everybody tuning in today just a 10,000-foot view on what the Youth Marketing Coordinator does for the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So youth marketing is basically anything and everything to get kids interested in the team that doesn't directly relate to them playing football itself. So we have a kids club program and newborn program that are kind of our big programs to get kids interacting with the team on a kind of fun level, event level. We also have the youth digital show Vikings Huddle to get kids interested in the team. And then game day, training camp, engaging on site. So kind of 10,000-foot view, anything and everything to get kids excited for the team is what we're working on.
That sounds like a super exciting job. It holds a special place in my heart with us being the Youth and Education Department here at the Hall of Fame. So a lot of the same stuff going on, the idea of getting that next generation to be impacted by the game. And, when it comes to working with youth and, teaching the game at such a young level, there's a lot to love about that career. So why do you love what you get to do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think the thing I love most about my job is just seeing the children's eyes light up when they get to see their favorite player or they get to have an experience that's kind of a once in a lifetime experience. And just thinking back to how that was me as a kid. I grew up absolutely loving sports. And so just being able to see that and give back to the kids and know that we are making kind of a once in a lifetime impact on them is something super rewarding for me. And I love that part of my job.
I call that aha moment when you're in a program and you see the kid kind of the light bulb goes off, the eyes get big, and you can see that they get it. That's such a cool part, because even if it's one kid, if it's 1,000 kids, you made a difference in that kid's life, and to see that aha moment is super, super cool. And you talk about your journey to where you are today. Everybody's got to start somewhere. So, growing up, was the NFL and sports always a path that you kind of saw yourself going, or did you have another dream job that you wanted when you were growing up?
Yeah, the first job I ever wanted in kindergarten was to be a dolphin trainer. I loved animals. I was like, that seems super cool. But then growing up, I don't think I ever really had kind of that dream job. I didn't have a career field I wanted to go into, even when I was looking at colleges. And so I'd always loved sports, played them my whole life, and eventually found that to be the best path just because I was so passionate about it, thought it would make a great career field. But I didn't really have a dream job growing up. And I think it's important for people to realize that you don't have to have one. And even if you do have one, you can change paths partway through your life.
1,000%. You hear the story all the time about, folks who are in college who don't know what they want to do until it's, graduation is a week away. And it's like, well, gosh, shoot, I still don't have an idea. I mean, I was in that same boat, before I graduated, and it is kind of cool to see the transition between, I want to be A, B, or C, and then you get into college and you get into your major and you learn about all these cool different opportunities and that's out there that you had no idea about until you got into that major. So you get into college, get into your major at the University of Kansas. And I mentioned you had a sport management major. So what made you decide finally on sport management? And then what was it like being a student with that degree at the University of Kansas?
Yeah, so I think the thing that made me decide on going down the sport management path was I took a few different classes freshman year in different areas just to kind of see what I liked. And I really liked my intro to sport management class. And like I said, I knew I had a passion for sports. I had worked in sports a little bit in high school. And so I just thought, you know what, if I can't decide on anything else, I know I like this at least. Let's go with that for my major. And then if it doesn't work out, I can still go a different route for a job. So that's kind of why I got into it and absolutely loved it at KU.
That's the same story. Everybody kind of goes into that plan on, you don't really know or have a good idea on what you want to do until you kind of get your toe in the water and see all the different experience there are. And students in high school are like that. Some people who are in high school have that frame of mindset where they know exactly what they want to do and they're going to pursue that. And like you said, you and I are kind of in that other boat. We didn't really have a specific idea on what we wanted. So for a student in high school who is getting towards their junior, senior year, who's looking and starting to think about a career they want to go into, a major they want to get into in college, what would some advice that you would have for some students in high school who are in that scenario to find that niche, to find that one thing they like to do? How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think it really just goes back to kind of looking back into yourself and finding what do you enjoy doing in your life? What are you maybe good at in school right now? And kind of what are you passionate about? And then when you go to college, not pigeonholing yourself into one thing right away and keeping your options open. So taking those intro classes in different paths and getting involved in different clubs so that you can kind of see, okay, yep, I'm in a new setting now and things have changed a little bit. My interests have changed, or I really like this and I had no clue it even existed before. So I think my biggest piece of advice would just be to kind of be open-minded and branch out and try new things till you really find what you like. And then once you find what you like, dive into it all the way so that you can start building that resume.
So then you find what you like, you start building that resume, you get to college, and specifically with a degree in sport, networking is huge and super important, to kind of set yourself up for a career down the road. So in your experience, how important was networking when you were in college, and what were some different ways you went about doing that as a college student?
Yeah, networking is definitely something that gets preached to you in college. I was not someone who really liked networking in college until probably my senior year, but it is super important. So, some people have great connections in their industry already. I'm someone who did not have very many connections going into the sporting industry. And so, you need to be able to build those somehow. And the way I did it really was just getting my first job in KU athletics and then being able to network with people within that career within the athletic department. And from there, my boss was great and helped me get my next job and gave a great reference. And so that's kind of how it's ended up working out for me, is just putting myself out there, showing what I can do, and then bosses and people I've worked with being like, yes, she's awesome, giving a reference, or hey, I know about this open position, think you'd be great. But before you get into that, and if you're at a general networking event, I think going into it with a plan is super important of what you want to get out of it. So if you know who you're going to be networking with, do your research beforehand so you have specific questions to ask them. And if you don't know who you're going to be networking with, just know kind of what you want to get out of that night so that you can make use of your time.
You totally agree. And you mentioned gaining that experience being a key to, kind of finding out what you want to do. But at the same time, that's going to help you with the networking side. And you're going to be getting involved in so much more, not only to set yourself up in your career and find out what you want to do, but at the same time, you're going to be meeting all these different individuals, kind of forwarding yourself in that field. So when you were in school, we talked about specific networking, and that usually leads to those opportunities, whether it be part-time jobs while you're at school or internships. You mentioned you worked there in the KU athletic department. What were some of your roles there? And then how did that lead to your internships, and what internships were you able to be a part of?
Yeah, so I was a student equipment manager for the Kansas women's volleyball team. I got involved in that my sophomore year and then was with the team through senior year. So that was my role, that was my job in college. And it also ended up being great experience to network as well. So in that role, I worked with the team every single day with practice, helped coaches with recruiting, equipment and laundry services, worked with the communication team, worked with facilities, worked with academics teams. So you kind of got to touch a little bit of each department within KU Athletics, which was a great opportunity. And then from there, I ended up actually choosing to do an internship outside of KU Athletics as my final internship, just because I felt like I had already built those connections and wanted to expand my network a little more.
Can you go into a little bit? I've got a question here about that. Before you were with the Vikings, that internship I think you're talking about is the one that you did with the College World Series there in Omaha. What was that experience like? And then how did that prepare you for your current role in working with the youth within the NFL?
Absolutely. So at KU, the final semester of your senior year is fully an internship. So we're not taking classes, you just do a full-time internship. And I decided to kind of take a leap of faith and move to Omaha, Nebraska, where I knew nobody, to intern with the College World Series of Omaha Inc. And it was absolutely incredible. It was a great experience just to kind of dive into the industry itself and be working in the office 40 hours with other professionals and kind of learn the different nuances that come with a career that you don't realize as a student. So I think that gave me great experience as a student to then kind of put myself ahead of some other students who didn't have that internship opportunity. But with College World Series of Omaha Inc., I mainly focused on marketing and events. So obviously the event itself is the big one in June with college baseball. But I also got to help create a youth kids clinic, and that was the first of its kind there under the College World Series. So those different experiences really helped me to gain kind of the experience I needed to land that next internship with the Vikings.
And I think experiences do play a huge role. Speaking personally, my goal when I got into all my internship time when I was in college was to not so much find out what I wanted to do, but find out what I didn't want to do. And you get involved, and use two great examples there at KU and then the College World Series, to where you're not just cornered or pigeonholed into one, assignment. you get to kind of have a touch point with all these different career fields that you go, yeah, I might love operations, but I don't like sales. So, and within, two separate careers, you're able to get two totally different experiences, but still touch so many different departments. And that, kind of leads into that continued learning. So, thanks to technology today and things like Zoom, like we're on today, current students, young professionals, seasoned professionals, all have the opportunity to kind of continue to better their craft. So what are some examples that you have done, or things that you have kind of seen over the past, year or so that you've been there full time with the Vikings, where you've been able to kind of better yourself professionally and continue that learning, throughout your full time career?
Sure. So one thing I really like to do, the NFL sends out kind of daily best practices of what other teams in the league are doing, as well as what teams in other professional and collegiate sports are doing. So I really like to dive deep into those. And it's not necessarily something that relates to youth marketing, it's all different departments, but just being able to see kind of what is out there and take that and think, okay, how can we put that into youth marketing and help make our programs better? So I really enjoyed doing that, as well as in the past 6 months, pretty much everything has moved virtually, with a lot of different seminars now being offered free that maybe you would typically have to fly to a different state to attend. So I've been trying to sign up for those as well, whether it's ESPNW or leadership conferences or technology conferences, just to learn a little more, as things move to more virtual, how I can better my craft there. So I've been trying to take advantage of those as well. And I think that's something that is a great resource that really didn't even exist as much when I was in college, that college students today can take advantage of.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned, something that's very prevalent now is how everybody is learning and having to take that virtual route. And because of the pandemic, have had to adjust so much. For you specifically in your career, how has the pandemic affected you and the things you do on a day-to-day basis? And how have you and the Minnesota Vikings kind of, taken that in stride and changed up some of the things and the way you handle different programs throughout the year?
So we, like most people, have been working from home since March. Now that the team's back, a few of us are back in the office every once in a while, but I would say that's obviously the biggest change. And then, like everything else, we can't hold virtually, or we can't hold in-person events anymore. So moving all those things virtual and trying to still maintain those engaging touch points with fans, and seeing how they can still be a part of game day from home, or how we can make a holiday special, a birthday special, even when we can't interact with them face to face. I'd say that's the biggest change we've made, is just having to do a lot more planning of virtual things and kind of quickly come up to speed with some of like the Zooms or Photoshop I'm learning more of now, just because you have to take advantage of that more than we did when we were doing things in person.
Oh, absolutely. And, when you have a program like your Vikings Huddle, which we'll dive into here, that is already a video based program, it does create a great opportunity. And, what is going on is terrible. And so many people have been affected. But, every time there's a curse, there seems to be a blessing on the other side. And be able to grow different programming. The Vikings Huddle, I'm assuming, being one of those. So can you just explain, what the Vikings Huddle is and how it impacts youth across, probably across the entire country?
Absolutely. So Vikings Huddle is a youth digital show. It was on TV here locally for the first couple of years, and then we moved it fully digital last year, just knowing that kind of the age of everything is moving to more digital and streaming. So this year we actually have paused it just because every single thing in the organization has moved virtual now. And obviously the department didn't just grow overnight to be able to handle all the extra virtual stuff going on. But Vikings Huddle is a great way for us to connect with kids and get players in, which is another reason we kind of had to pause it. So players are involved in every segment of it, going out into the community. One thing that we do is called Vikings Explorers, and we explore different career fields. So we'll take a player to the zoo, or we'll take them to the dentist or to a recycling plant, and kind of show those different career fields that maybe kids don't typically see. You see the police officers, you see the teachers in your everyday life, but what are those other career fields that you don't know about? So that's one of the really exciting parts of it. And we're hoping to get back to that next year. But this year, we're just kind of sharing all those different touch points and trying to make it exciting while still keeping the players safe and not going out and exposing them.
That is definitely super cool. I can imagine, one of these big offensive linemen, defensive linemen at the dentist, sitting in that dentist chair, all kicked back, scared of all the noises that are happening. So it's definitely a cool program. And, kind of in line with what we're trying to do here is just showcase. So there's so much out there that if you have the smallest passion for one thing, that you can probably have a career in that. Which is going to lead us into, our next part. You mentioned getting out in the community and working with players from the team. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to throw it to the director of youth and education here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Mr. Jerry Shockey, who's out in our museum, who's got a jersey from now. This guy doesn't currently play for the Minnesota Vikings, but this guy right here had a huge impact on the organization. And I don't have a vote, but I'm going to assume might one day have a bronze bust right here in Canton, Ohio. So Jerry, are you there?
Yes, I am, Jake. Thank you for connecting in here today to our Facebook Live audience. Alyssa, thank you for being here as well. Today I'm here in front of a jersey from former Minnesota Vikings running back Adrian Peterson. This particular jersey is on display at the Pro Football Hall of Fame because it was worn by AP during his rookie season when he ran for over 1,300 yards and scored 13 touchdowns on his way to a Pro Bowl season and Offensive Rookie of the Year honors. Now, Alyssa, let me ask you this question. Now, obviously, you will not be doing any programming with AP right now, as he still plays for your division rival, the Detroit Lions. But I was wondering, how much involvement do you have from current and former Vikings players in the youth programming that you plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. Wish we could do more with AP right now. Excited to get him out of the NFC North and back in purple, hopefully when he goes into the Hall of Fame. But yeah, we try and do as much as we can with players. Growing up, I think we can all agree that we looked up to different athletes, and so we realized that that is still how kids are today. And so anytime we can get players involved, a lot with our virtual events, a lot with our in-person events normally, and then in our digital show, we'll try and have them, whether it's out in the community volunteering with kids or just doing meet and greets, doing Q&As, so that kids can kind of learn from them and also see that they can become them, or that they have other dreams and aspirations besides just them as a football player. So being able to show kids that that they're a well-rounded person and not just an athlete is something that is important to us.
No, I think that's super important too. Us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we don't get to dive in a lot to current players. We're always talking to our Gold Jackets and seeing them out in their community and the impact that they have on a day-to-day basis, when they don't have the Gold Jacket on, whether they're a coach, what they do off the field. So it is really cool to see the impact that you have, not only with current players, but with those legends as well, because a lot of the times those are the guys, especially, in the area that everybody knows and loves. So it is definitely a cool impact, kind of throwing back into your career now. There's always, when you're in school, that you talk about the corporate ladder, and that's the buzzword that's thrown around. Everybody's got to start out at the bottom, and climb their way up to the top. And your path is a great example of that. You went from an intern that was not even in the organization to landing an internship and then eventually a full-time job. So what is it like, from a former intern perspective, being in charge of all the interns when it comes to time for training camp? Is there a special relationship that you have because you kind of know the shoes that they're in because you've been there? Or what is that relationship like? And what are some of the things you learned from your internship that you then apply to, overviewing or overseeing all the other interns?
It's a great question. I think being as young as I am in my career, there's definitely kind of a fun connection to the training camp interns who are typically just in college right now also, so only a few years younger. But definitely having been an intern myself, I think you can relate to kind of the long hours or the not so fun work that interns typically have to do, and just empathize with them and know that eventually that's going to help them get to where they want to be as well, building those connections and getting that kind of internship experience to begin with.
Now, would you say which side did you learn the most? Was it, being that intern where you're there to kind of, do the work that not a lot of people like to do, and learn from that, or, from the flip side on the, more of a leadership and mentorship side of things, which opportunity did you, kind of did you learn the most from?
That's a tough question. I think experience-wise, kind of getting to where I am now, the internship is definitely where I learned the most of those skills. But now being in the leadership side, being kind of on the back end of hiring interns, learning a lot there as well, just as far as, oh, like this is what other people's resumes look like. This is what people look for when they are looking for interns. This is how I can now develop myself as a leader and help shape these people, just like all the great mentors I've had have helped me. So I think both present great ways to improve. I would say where I'm currently at, I learned more in my internship, but I'm continuing to grow every day in my new role.
And, I think that's the goal, going to work every day is you want to go in there learning and being able to better yourself. So the next day you come in better than the day before, if that little tongue twister makes sense. But I think there's so much you can learn, working in sports. Here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we like to say we're unapologetically football. The values that the game of football teaches, the life lessons that the game teaches can be used to make you great on the field and, within the X's and O's. But those values play such an important role off the field, and they make you a better, person, community member, employee, boss, whatever it might be. So, you've been involved with the game here now for a little bit, and especially at the youth level, seeing those values kind of played out. So what are some of the lessons you think the game of football teaches, and how important are they to everybody's life, outside the game?
I think football and sports in general teach great life lessons, whether you're participating or just watching. I think you can learn a lot. I would say kind of the key ones to me are teamwork, communication, and time management. And all three of those absolutely transcend sports and go into whatever career industry you go through. And I think when you're watching a sport, you can see that those good teams, the really good ones, you can see the team chemistry they have and how they're willing to fight for each other, and the communication open and honest just to get to that end goal that everyone has together is super important. And then time management obviously can't be said enough, whether practice gets changed or a game gets changed. Something comes up that you had no clue, someone gets injured and then you're in. All those things absolutely happen in the business side of sports as well. So I think those three are kind of my big takeaways, but absolutely everyone can learn something from sports, I think.
And I think, we're in a time now where those are very, very important, whether it's, social justice, whether it's the pandemic and schedules constantly changing. These values have never been more prevalent, than they are today. You talk about things you learn in the game, things you learn, in the office, and how they relate so much. When you're in the office, as much as you would probably like to be in the office more than you are now, what does that day look like for you? So what does a typical work week, Monday, to Sunday for a lot of staffers in the NFL, what does a work week look like for you? And how do you prep for it, knowing that it's going to be kind of the same every week, but you're going to have different programs and activation that you're going to be doing, every week?
Great question. I would say there's really no one day that's like the next. Everything is different. I think one thing that surprises people about my job is my department specifically, we're typically more busy in the off season than we are during the season, which most people think, oh, football season is when you're busy. And don't get me wrong, we definitely are busy in football season as well. But the off season is when we really have the opportunity to engage with kids as summer is happening. Players maybe are a little more available with schedules. They're not focused as much on football. But I would say a typical week for me is doing database entries for our Kids Club program, newborn program, making sure we're keeping up with all of those that we can communicate with our members, getting that communication in line and out to them, whether it's about a new event coming up or just reminding them that, hey, game day is on Sunday. Make sure you wear your purple on Friday and get excited to cheer for the team. And then most of the time, depending on what season it is, it's planning an event. So whether it's Halloween is coming up or the combine in the spring. So planning events around those to help highlight those big items in the season of football and also the season of life.
Saw John Randall this morning on Twitter and Instagram posted his Purple Friday picture that we see that our Hall of Famer, our great John Randall, posts every week. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I struck that up in my head that I saw that this morning. So there, not only are those youth out there, you've got your legends, your Hall of Famers posting those Purple Fridays as well. Got a question came here from Facebook. This is from Joey, who's a return watcher. So Joey, thank you so much for continuing to watch and learn during this program. He asked, we talked about all the crazy things going on right now, specifically the pandemic and how it affects what you're doing right now. But what do you think the effects are going to be down the road, the long-term effects that you're going to see kind of come out once everything is hopefully back to normal, what it used to be?
It's a great question, Joey. I think one thing that we've seen is as we've transitioned our in-person events to virtual is just how much wider of a reach that gets to fans. And so I think you'll continue to see virtual events happen once in-person events are also allowed to happen. And we definitely plan on hosting both still, just so that our fans in Arizona and Montana and California and Boston are all able to still connect with us, even if they can't make it to our in-person events. So I think that's kind of one of the main things will happen. And then as you've been able to see, people continue to just innovate and come up with new ideas. Obviously in stadiums, touchless is going to be a big thing when we return. But I think we'll just continue to see the innovation and creativity from people grow as this continues to move forward.
It has been kind of cool to see how creative people have gotten to do programming, whether it's virtually using Zoom or so many different things that people are doing and coming up with to make sure these programs still happen. So, that's kind of what the future of the industry is going to look like. You've been in your career a pretty short time now, but from the start of your full-time career till now, how has the industry changed, and what are some of the changes you have seen even in this short amount of time?
I think people are starting to put a larger emphasis on youth. When I first got the job, I had no clue that youth marketing even existed or was a career path option. So I think people are starting to put a stronger emphasis on knowing that, hey, youth are important to growing our fan base down the road. In the NFL itself, we know that over 80% of avid fans choose their favorite team by the time they leave high school. And so that's a very large part of your population that you want to make sure those fans stick with your team, engage with them, become season ticket holders down the line. So I think that is super important and something that has kind of continued to evolve since I first got into the industry itself.
We mentioned Alyssa before, talking a lot about working with youth. In sports, as we mentioned, there's so many different opportunities. Even if you don't have a degree in sports, you can still work with a sports organization. There's so much out there. But specifically looking at, a field surrounded, and teaching the youth and working with the youth, why were you attracted to that kind of niche market? And once you've gotten into that career, why has it been important to you to kind of advocate to how important it is to work with the youth and make sure you bring them in as a fan?
My first ever job was coaching little kids soccer growing up. And so I've always loved working with kids and being involved with sports and kids. And then when I went to college, working with the volleyball team, every summer we were hosting volleyball camps for kids, coaching them. I'd come home and coach basketball camp. So I'd always loved working with kids in sports, but in my mind at the time, the only option was then to become a coach. And I knew I didn't want to coach. And so when I saw the internship posted, I was like, wow, this is a really cool opportunity. I had no clue existed. And it kind of combines marketing, which I was interested in, as well as the youth side, and then the community aspect. And I think that's something that the youth aspect brings into the marketing side that maybe general marketing doesn't have as much, as we are very community based, wanting to get involved in the community and make our community feel like they are a part of the Vikings family as well. So that is, I would say, the biggest thing I enjoy about my career is just the mix of all the different aspects: youth, marketing, community, and sport, kind of all in one. And I love it.
So I think the community has got to hold a special place in your heart as well. Being raised in the area, leaving to go to college and get some other internships, but eventually, coming back home for that full-time job. So was that always the goal for you to come back home, or was that just, by happenstance, my hometown team has a job that is in a field that I am interested in? How important was that for you? And what is the impact of, kind of working in your hometown and where you grew up?
So when I was looking for that internship or job coming out of college, once again, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself. I was at a time in my life where there was really nothing holding me to a specific area in the country. And so I was applying to jobs everywhere, whether it be in Washington, Florida, Texas. I was looking anywhere and everywhere. And I had set a goal for myself to come back to Minnesota, or at least kind of the Midwest area, within 5 to 10 years. Like, I thought I probably wanted to make it back here, but I was willing to go anywhere for that first job, get that experience, and, open my eyes to maybe something else that I would love. So it kind of just happened to work out really nicely for me that I got that job right back in Minnesota right away. I don't think, obviously, that doesn't happen for everyone, and I think I would have been perfectly fine if it hadn't for me as well. But that was something that I really enjoyed, and I'm happy it ended up happening.
I can echo that as well. I grew up 20 minutes away from where I'm sitting right now, and got very lucky. Growing up, never thought of the Hall of Fame as a place to work as a full-time job. Just thought it was another museum you drove by every couple of days. But to go to college and have an internship here and eventually become a full-time employee, you really see how important a place like the Hall of Fame, organization like an NFL team, the Minnesota Vikings, is to the area, to where, if you're from the area, you almost kind of take it for granted until you can see the background work and see all the cool work that goes into, especially when you're working with the community. And I think that speaks a lot to, not only the organization, but all the great work that goes into that. And now, you've been a part of it now for just over a year, working with an NFL club. What is the resonance you've seen from that NFL club, from the Vikings in their community, from the community side? You see it as an employee and all the great work that's going on, but is there any ever moment where someone from the community has approached you or somebody at an event and, kind of given you words of encouragement or talked to you about how great the events are for the community?
Definitely. And that is one of the most rewarding parts of the job, is getting that feedback from fans, just knowing that we've put all this time and effort into trying to plan this event that we think is going to be great for fans and for the community, but to kind of get that reaction back from them saying how it changed their life, or this was the best part of their kid's day, or they've been talking about it for a week straight. That's super rewarding. I actually grew up just across the street from Winter Park, which is the Vikings' old training facility. So I would see players all the time, just in passing. And the Vikings were always a part of the community, but I think now, working from the team standpoint itself and just seeing truly how much they're in the community, I mean, I think it's definitely stepped up quite a bit over my lifetime as well, now being in Eagan in our new training facility. Community is something that our ownership group puts a strong importance on as well. And so I think everyone in the Vikings organization realizes that. And it's just great to be out and get those touch points with fans.
Have you had a favorite moment in your short career there with the Vikings? Personally, to you, that might have been your favorite thing you've gotten to be a part of, experience you got to go to, event, game, anything? What kind of has been your favorite moment with your time with the Vikings?
I would say my favorite moment would be last year. For the first time, I planned a Halloween event for our kids club members, and they had never done it before. It ended up being our largest ever attended event. And that was something super fun. So we decorated the entire indoor practice field, Halloween decorations galore.
Awesome.
So that was super rewarding to just see all that effort turn out into such an amazing event. And another cool aspect of that event was not only was it Kids Club members coming in their costumes to trick or treat, we brought in police officers and firefighters to be a part of the community giving out candy. We had players in costumes. One was in a giant inflatable giraffe suit, like handing out candy to kids. And then we also partnered with our community engagement team to work with a player who bussed in kids from Boys and Girls Club and bought them costumes and brought them in to experience the event who maybe wouldn't get to do that. So just kind of tying in all those different departments and then seeing it become the success that it was super exciting to me. So I would say that was my favorite part, but definitely have had so many great experiences since starting with the team.
It's definitely cool to see the players kind of take that tough guy image off when it comes to those events. And it's same for our Gold Jackets. I'm sure it's the same for the Legends and the current players there with the organization. But it is cool to kind of see them have a little bit of fun, especially when it's with kids. And an event like that, which sounds awesome, by the way, definitely something growing up that kids are going to remember when they have that interaction with that player, because those are the moments that those 5 to 10 seconds that really can stick with a kid, for their entire life. And, you talk about all the work that goes into that, and it's just not like snap your fingers, boom, here's an event. There's a ton of work and a ton of things and tips and tricks that goes into that. So what would you say, and this might be the hardest question we asked all afternoon here, what would your secrets to success be, whether it's professionally or even putting on an event like that?
I would say the secret to success to me is just being unapologetically yourself. You talk about Pro Football Hall of Fame being unapologetically football. I think in order to be successful, you just have to stay true to who you are. So for me, I take pride in being a great communicator, whether that's written, making sure everyone is up to date on where things stand. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest keys to success for me, is just kind of knowing who you are and then being able to put that into your career field.
We've talked a lot today about the positive side of your job and the things that you love, but there's got to be some things that are tough throughout your job as well. So, we focus on a lot of the things that are great and the things you love about your job, but are there things that are a little tough, on a day-to-day basis? And how are you taking those things that you might not be the best at and, continuing to try and learn and better yourself to turn a said weakness into another strength?
Definitely. Yeah. I would say the biggest thing that I've had to learn is I'm someone who really likes to have things planned. And going into the career field that I'm in, I learned that sports doesn't necessarily let you plan, a trip 7 weeks in advance. Practice might get changed, or who knows what comes up, and then you're working long hours and that dinner you had scheduled you actually can't make it to anymore. So I would say that's kind of the biggest challenge that I've experienced so far, is just learning that sometimes you don't have control, and that's okay. And so I'm definitely not as big of a planner as I used to be, but I really enjoy those long hours. I think that's kind of one of the things that people might say is typically a bad part of the career. I think anyone who's going into the sporting industry, they have to be passionate about it, because you are going to work those long hours. So yeah, I would say there are bad parts, but really I enjoy it all. And it ends up, even if you are working long hours, something, you end up seeing that end result, and it's worth it all.
Absolutely. Got time for a few more questions here before we wrap things up today. We've talked a lot today about networking and getting and gaining experiences, all the things that you have done, to set yourself up for the career you're in now. So when you're in college, when you're networking at any level, what are some of the best ways, to reach out to people who are involved in the sporting industry? More specifically, if somebody wanted to get into contact with you that watched this program, sees this program down the road, what's the best way they can contact you?
I think LinkedIn is probably the best way to get in contact with anyone professionally, whether you know them or you're just reaching out blind. I think that's a great way to connect, and not only, ask them to connect on LinkedIn, but send that message to them and explain who you are, why you want to connect with them. See if you can sit down and chat with them for a 10-minute phone call. I'm definitely so open to chat with people. I've done a couple already. I've got another one scheduled next week. But I think the big thing for me on that is being purposeful with your interaction. And like I said, actually messaging them and putting out why you want to get to know them, and how it can benefit not only you, but also be a benefit to them as well, why they should want to take the time out to get to know you, or why you're reaching out. Are you interested in sport, or are you just a fan who thinks it's cool? Because that is definitely something that you have to separate in this career field as well.
So then, you take the step from college to that professional level, and you kind of get to, I like to say, you get to sit on the other side of the table when you're doing the interviews and everything. How important is that step for somebody to take to not only connect, but then message? And have there been examples to where somebody might have gotten the moved to the top of the stack a little bit more because they've reached out, because they've made that initial contact, rather than just, blindly applying for something?
Definitely. In sports and probably everywhere right now, the number of applicants that we get just continues to increase for each open position, whether it's an internship or a full-time job. And so any connection that you can have to the organization that you're applying for, whether it be to that specific department or whether it be to someone in a different department, just being able to have someone who can speak on your behalf and say, hey, you should take a closer look at this person's resume because I really think that they're a great candidate, they're a great person, could be a great asset to this organization. So building those connections is definitely important. It's not going to get you the job immediately, definitely not, but it will give that kind of second chance to get a better, closer look that maybe you wouldn't have gotten if the person didn't talk to the hiring manager and get your name up there.
Absolutely. And, we've talked about so many great, tidbits and points today. My last question here for you today, and this is the question we ask usually at the end of any program we do, whether it's our Before the Snap series, our Heart of a Hall of Famer program powered by Extreme Networks. If you could leave everybody that's watching today, and these are students, young professionals, seasoned professionals, with one piece of advice to sum everything up that we've kind of talked about today, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think it would go back to what I said earlier of just being unapologetically yourself. Find your passion and go after it. Stay true to yourself. Don't try and change just because you think this organization is great and that job is awesome, but then you get there and it's not what you thought. That's okay. But then being able to stay true to yourself and find that next point that is maybe better suited for you. That would be my biggest piece of advice. And I know it's hard to do, but you got lots of time right now. So search yourself and find what's important to you.
Absolutely. I think that's a great piece of advice to leave everybody with today. Before we completely wrap up, I've got a few announcements on our end here. Make sure you tune in to all of the Pro Football Hall of Fame social media outlets, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, we talked about today, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it might be. Make sure you follow, subscribe, stay up to date with all the great programming that we have coming up here. Speaking with our youth education department, next week we have a Heart of a Hall of Famer powered by Extreme Networks with Gold Jacket Dan Deerdorf, a special Heart of a Hall of Famer because he grew up right here in Canton, Ohio. So a very cool program that we're going to talk to him a lot about his time growing up in Canton and what the city means to him. Next Friday, before the snap, we've got the manager of community relations with the National Football League, Christina Hofstadt. She's going to talk a lot about her career working for the National Football League up in New York City and all the things she has gone through from a community relations standpoint and how she got to where she is today. And then the week after that, we're jumping way ahead now. On October 20th, we've got Gold Jacket class of 2020 enshrinee Isaac Bruce, who's going to be doing a Heart of a Hall of Famer powered by Extreme Networks with us as well. So a lot of great programming coming up, and that's just what we have. There are so many other things that you can specifically our podcast, the Mission Podcast, hosted by my great friend, coworker Jameer Howerton here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, where he interviews a wide range of people from NFL legends to Gold Jackets to members of the media. Make sure you subscribe to that podcast, give that a listen, and hear about all the cool things going on around here in Canton, Ohio, and the National Football League. So, Alyssa, I want to thank you so much for being a part of the program today. As I said at the beginning, the game of football wouldn't be like it is today, not only without the players' influence, but all the people that go into making it that piece you see on TV every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, whenever it might be. It's a 365-day job. It's not just the fall, the football season. There's so much that goes into it. So I want to thank you so much for participating today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I truly enjoyed myself and hope people were able to learn a little bit more about my career path. And please, anyone watching, don't hesitate to reach out if you have more questions. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to tell you more about where I came from or help any way I can. So I've really enjoyed this and can't thank the Pro Football Hall of Fame enough for putting on an awesome series like this.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you so much again. Thank you for everything you do for the game. Thank you for everything you do for the Vikings organization. For everybody tuning in, thank you so much for watching. We hope to see you next Friday. As I mentioned, Christina Hofstadt, Manager of Community Relations with the National Football League, the NFL, is going to be our special guest on our next Before the Snap series. So everybody tuning in, for myself, Alyssa, Jerry, thank you so much for participating, so much for watching, and we'll see you next week here on Facebook as part of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Before the Snap series.